Hi y'all. So it's been a while since I've updated. I have been just really busy with work and school and all the pieces. I have been getting a lot of inquiries around like how I balance life, so I thought I'd address that this video. The answer, not well. That's not true. I've done a lot to like make it work, but yeah. So the place I'm in right now, I'm at the end of my first year at MCU. The classes end in about a month, which seems really surreal. Feels like it's like been 2 seconds. And I'm in phase 1 still, so I still have one more term in phase 1 because I took this term pretty light. I knew that I had a lot of births coming up as a doula, and I knew that I had a lot of overnight postpartum work as well. So I just kind of wanted to scale back a little bit, and it felt good to do so. So I only took 2 courses this term instead of like 4, 5, 6, however many I will be taking and have been taking. And it feels really good. There's still like big classes, there's still a lot of work to do in those classes, but I'm like really thrilled by the decision to scale back a little bit, which is like antithetical to who I am usually. I feel like I'm very much a person who will like do too much, take on too much too quickly sometimes in my excitement, and I don't feel like I did that as much, you know, this term and last term, which is really nice. Yeah, so talking about like how to balance all of this, I feel like I've gotten a lot of like local emails from people who are interested in joining midwifery school, but I also got a few YouTube messages in the meantime as well. So I just kind of wanted to address like what my life looks like. I do think it's a little bit more unique than like the average midwifery student because I don't have children of my own, which in my view makes it so much easier for me. So like even for instance, I had to make, you know, for one of our assignments in one of my courses, I had to make an on-call support list, right? So like, who do I call, who can my spouse call in case I am called to a birth or when I'm called to a birth, right? Well, I've been a doula for a long time, so my list is pretty concise and pretty clear, and it's literally like, in case of emergency, take me to these hospitals. My mom, my spouse, my backup placenta specialist, that's it. That's all my life really needs. Like my life is pretty well suited to on-call life at this point. And I don't have a lot of things that I have to worry about if I can't make it to those things, right? Like other commitments. So like if you have a kid, I just know, like childcare, right? Like calling the backup childcare if it's a long birth and the original childcare times out, those types of situations, right? Or like, you know, you're like a Cub Scout leader, right? And your kid has an event. Well, what do you do when you can't go to that event or when you're called away from that event? So there's a lot of little pieces that I'm not having to deal with on a regular basis being on call as a doula or a student midwife, and that I don't plan to have to deal with for many years. So I just like to like put that out there because I feel like a lot of people ask me what my, you know, how I make things work, because I work a lot, but the reason it works so much, I mean, it's twofold, because I have a partner who's super supportive and does things to make my life easier on a regular basis, but then I also don't have kids, and I think that makes a really big difference. So just something to keep in mind as we venture on in this video. So the other piece of just like how I manage my life is my calendar. I have an iPhone. I use my Apple Calendar like really regularly. I know a lot of people use Google, but I find my Apple Calendar to be sufficient. And I put everything in there. So when I have an overnight, I put exactly which hours of that overnight. I put which hours I plan to sleep that day or the next or both. I put in which appointments I have around those times. And I time things so that hopefully there is enough space to take a breath, to do the things I need to do, and also have downtime with my partner. And I try to do that every day. And it's easier said than done some days, right? So like if a birth happens, I'm not gonna get downtime with my partner. I know that, he knows that, it's great. But for the most part, so like right now, so just for instance, the last couple days, I've had about 4 to 5 overnight postpartum doula visits per week for the last month or so. And typically when baby is sleeping, instead of me sleeping, because I don't do that kind of care, I do awake care, I am doing homework, right? If there's nothing to be done around the home, if I've already meal prepped for the family, if laundry is done, if all those pieces are done and the baby is sleeping, my job is to get some homework done and stay awake, and just monitor whatever's happening. So, and my clients are really flexible with that as well. They all know that I'm in school, all those pieces. So I'm usually doing assignments at night, readings at night, those types of things. And I find that that actually really helps me. I don't know how other people are, but like if I have full, complete silence and it is dark outside, apparently I do really, really good work. So that's the majority of my homework time, is that time actually, is when I'm working on overnights. And then the other 3 days a week, I'm also doing homework. So typically we have one live class per week, per class, or per course I should say. So 2 classes that I may or may not be able to attend. They're usually in the middle of the day, so like mine right now are 9, 10, 11 a.m. time slots. And typically I'm in bed after an overnight by 7 a.m., 8 a.m. latest. So the idea that I would like stay up for that doesn't really make sense for me. So I just watch the recording most of the time and then do a little extra work to make sure that I understand all the pieces. I've taken really good notes. I've reached out with questions, all those pieces. And then after that, or in addition to that, each week, we also have like discussion posts we have to engage in. So throughout the week, I'm making sure that I am doing the pieces that I'm missing that are from like the live class, and also that I'm doing the discussion posts, which is really like live engagement back and forth with your classmates. And sometimes it's not live, but you know, it's just post engagement with your class. And I've gotten a lot from that. So I really, anyone who's in midwifery school and at MCU specifically, I really suggest diving into the discussion boards, because they are super helpful. There's a lot of people in other places in the country, other places in their curriculum, other places in their clinicals, and it's just really nice to get a good broad overview of what everyone is doing in their program and what midwifery school looks like for everybody else, and what midwifery looks like in every other place, which is really cool. So lots of overview, lots of good information there. And then, so we've covered overnights, we covered how I like catch up from missing live things if I do miss them, which most of the time I do. I think this week I got to 1 live and I felt really, really good about that. And of course there's benefits to being there live, right? You have to do less work long term. And if you get to live interact with your instructor, which makes a lot more sense in total if you have questions, but anyway. And then in terms of like testing, that's a pretty big like issue I've had to work around. So because I have such a weird schedule, and because, and I don't have Wi-Fi at home, that's a thing for me. We haven't had Wi-Fi or internet at our home in quite some time. I use coffee shops, the local community college, friends' homes, whatever. I don't actually find that I need to have internet at home to do my things. I also have like hotspot on my phone if I need it at home in a pinch, but I prefer to leave my home to do schoolwork, and that's a pretty big part of, and business work too, I will just add that. That's a pretty big part of, I think, why my particular setup works for me at this point, is because I don't like sit at home and do homework leisurely over many, many hours and then like let that eat into my time with my husband, or like my leisure time or my work time. I have to like have segments, if that makes sense. So it actually works for me. But all that said, there are, drawbacks to that, because if you like forget something, you can't like necessarily do it in a pinch. So I really have to plan out my life, which still ends up working for me. But the area it is a little bit more challenging is when we have exams, because they are proctored exams, which means, they're online, it's not in person, but they are proctored live online by a testing group called Examity. And so you do have to have like plugged in or consistent Wi-Fi, and, be in a room by yourself, which is really hard in coffee shops, right? So I've had to get a little bit creative in that realm, which means I have to schedule out well in advance for this purpose. And so sometimes I am at friends' houses, and sometimes I am at the local community college, like I talked about. In their library, they have like little conference rooms you can book. I've also done things at like the WeWork, like the share spaces where I've rented by the hour. And I still find that, even though it's like a little bit of a pain in the butt and I have to plan really hard for it, and sometimes I even have to pay for those spaces, I still find that having that segment and having the ability to go somewhere else and focus somewhere else on what I'm doing besides my home is still very, very helpful for me. So all that said, I still love having no internet at home for that purpose. And then the other pieces that I'm juggling in my practice as a doula and educator is I do private childbirth education, which is 4 or more hours at a time with clients in their homes. And then I also do car seat checks, which is also like privately done in their home, or at their home, I should say. And those are like 1-hour visits. And then I also am a placenta specialist. So of course I'm picking up placentas, transporting them from hospitals or other birth places to my office, and then processing and then returning as well. So those are the big pieces I'm juggling. And then I do still have births happening for doula work. I am phasing that out of my practice, which I'm like in a process of grieving around. So I'll have a whole separate video on that. But basically I can't juggle all the things, right? And also be a student midwife in an actual apprenticeship, in a placement, right? So I feel very strongly that I need to back off from birth work, do a little bit more postpartum work, and of course the peripheral stuff, because I still need to work while I'm in school. And that's going to be the case like the whole time for me. And so it's really important to me that I make sure that I have all the pieces in my calendar, like I said. And when I schedule with people, they all know that I am on call for birth. So there are times that I have to reschedule, and it sucks. It's not easy. I do have to, reschedule things in my calendar and like push appointments. And then I also have to like configure very specifically, which does take a lot of like mental effort. But it's doable. I do all of it. It's fine. And so what it looks like in real time is sometimes I will have like a day off, and then that day off ends up being like, oh, there's a placenta born and I have to go get that right away. I can't like push it. But then also someone will call and be like, oh my goodness, we just birthed. We're on our way home from the hospital and we realize that the car seat is not in correctly. It's moving around. People call in a panic quite often, actually. And I feel like I want to try my best to meet their needs as soon as possible. So sometimes if I know I'm on call for a birth, I can't just be like, oh, well, I'm going to make this appointment for tomorrow because that day is easier for me. What it looks like in real time is, oh, if I'm going to help this person, if I'm going to be the person to be their car seat tech today or tomorrow, I need to do it as soon as possible because I know that my client has, is already 4 centimeters dilated, has been, whatever's going on for them. I have to take that into account so that I am able to meet all of the, fulfill anybody's needs that I have taken on, right? And sometimes it does mean referring out more often than I would like. The car seat referrals are hard because in our area there's not a lot of private practitioners. It's like CHP offices and public organizations that have wait times for months. I mean, really months. And I have a pretty big passion for doing car seats with families and doing education around safety in the car. So I try really hard to like fit as many of those appointments in as I can per week. And I'm like scaling back on like the childbirth ed because it's 4 hours minimum, which means that if I was called in the middle to go to a birth, that is a little bit more challenging to reschedule. It's not fun. It doesn't happen that often, but still. Yeah, and then like I said, placentas, they just come whenever they come, and I pick up whenever I can within the next 12 hours after birth. So lots of like configuration and moving pieces. But I will say my life has been like this for at least 4 years, where I've practiced all of the different things at once. The only thing that's different now is that I'm shifting away from one aspect, birth doula work, and instead have, which I say instead, this month I have both, but and shifting instead having more schoolwork, right? More school time, and then of course it's going to lead to being in clinic time as well. So my plan for the foreseeable future is to continue doing postpartum work, mostly daytime, some overnights, and then do placentas still, car seat visits, and be a student midwife and be in clinic. So I'm actually on my way today to do prenatals with a midwife, and I'm hoping that it works out and it's like a really great relationship and the start to something awesome. So we shall see, and I will update on clinic if and when it works out. All right, hope everybody's good out there.